Maybe I should arrange for him to fall on his head again so he can get unwrapped.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to my dark feminine study, Unveiling Brandy. For those of you who have never heard, Brandy is a character from the 1996 film written by Martin Lawrence, which is A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. As a kid, this was one of my favorite movies. Why? I did not know, but even as a child, at this age, I was like 8 or 9 years old in 1996. Even as a child, I was always Team Brandy. Even as a child, I kind of picked up on the subtleties of the message behind the message. And so I always start off any feminine archetype with the character of Brandy. Now, Brandy also highlights a good character who did not heal and go on a proper journey in order to heal the things that she needed to heal to show up better for herself and for other people. Aspects of femininity that are often associated with power, mystery, intuition, and shadow elements of the feminine experience, such as assertiveness, sensuality, and complexity. This is something that is very much highlighted in Brandy's character on a thin line between love and hate, the complexities of who she is as a person, her past, her present, and then the future that she desires with a man who clearly does not desire her in the same capacity as she desire him, or so she thinks. So who is Brandy? Brandy is alluring. She's confident. She's charismatic. Brandy is a successful, wealthy Harvard graduate. She has built a reputation for herself amongst white male colleagues. This is highlighted in one of the scenes where she run into colleagues when she takes Martin Lawrence character Darnell to lunch and she runs into them. He tries to dap them up like a hood booger, and she ends up, kind of not even introducing him or even acknowledging his presence, and neither did they. Right. So she meet Darnell after his obnoxious hood booger friend, okay, tries to holla air quotes incorrectly. And Darnell steps in playing the good cop, bad cop. Oh, my friend, it fell and bumped his head, right? To which Brandy responds, well, maybe I should have him arranged to have him fall on his head again and knock some sense back into him. Okay. So this is how she meets Darnell, with the good cop, bad cop style, where they eventually place a bet on her head, right? To see if he can sleep with her. This has been Darnell's goal. This has been his entire thing. The entirety of the show is being a player, right? He's a ladies' man. The opening scene of the movie is him going around all the different women he's talking to, the little petite, little timid mouse that work at the cleaners, the single mom with the bad kids, the making promises he has no intentions on keeping, the woman that's I'm better than this, you ain't never gonna play me woman, but kind of use him for VIP tickets and want to be taken seriously, but I don't think she really takes him very seriously either. But she don't like the idea. Her ego takes a hit at the idea of somebody trying to play her. Yet she still talks to him, right? She's in his rounds. She's part of the rounds that she's making. So she's one of many, whether she realize it or not. So, they placed a bet on her head to see if he can sleep with her. You think his game is so top notch that he will actually be able to sleep with her, right? So Brandy is wealthy enough to have a driver, contacts for, a hit for hire. That's what it's given. Okay, so she has resources and she likes finer things. She's a real estate broker for the wealthy. So she's not a regular everyday real estate broker. She sells multi-million dollar homes to which he randomly shows up at, wasting her time in her career, which already highlights a level of disregard for her in the first place, right? So the thing I love about Brandy, in the dark feminine archetype of Brandy, is she shows power, right? Power, seduction, vengeance. The complexity of her character is always something that I've loved. And Brandy brings, I love the how they kind of unveil her character as time goes on, because you can obviously see that there is some sort of history she have when she, kind of comes off very, very standoffish, I would say. And so you see her shift from, not wanting to be bothered, right? Because she doesn't know him. He's clearly beneath her station, but this tends to happen in the Black community where we tend to entertain men below our station, not men within our same, sort of tax bracket or lifestyle. We in the Black community, no matter what they say, we tend to always give the guy with potential a chance. The guy that we kind of know we shouldn't give a chance, but maybe he seemed like a decent dude, maybe he doesn't. So this is already mistake number one. This is something that women alone have to learn and understand, that the conditioning and the coding of men, because there's nothing you can do to change that, right? So while you have these intentions for them that may be pure, maybe, you know, family building, if he's not in alignment with those intentions as well, is not really going to do much for the relationship for you or for them. So it's best to find someone whose goals and needs and desires and ultimate goals for their lifestyle is similar to yours, for sure. So her shift from love to rage often oftentimes, the shift from it sort of highlights the shift from her dark feminine to her light feminine, then back into her dark feminine, right? Brandy is a good case study of what it looks like to not heal from previous relationships, to like move on. It's not enough to just be a boss bitch. You have to be a boss bitch who's willing to heal, who's willing to do the work to undo the trauma and things that others may have bestowed on you. That may not be your portion, but you're holding it. So you have to learn how to get rid of those things so that you can show up better for yourself, and that chip on your shoulder, right? Leave a chip just tiny enough to remember, but not big enough to affect how you move into your next relationship or how you interact with new people, right? Because it can be distracting for multiple reasons. It can be distracting from your goals, right? Because this person is now entering your life who's beneath your station, and you have to introduce him to a lifestyle he, in fact, cannot keep up with, and we can tell that when he knocks over her Lalique crystal, and then he buys her another one and then says that it set him back, right? Already he's not in your tax bracket. So you have to introduce him, try to pull him up to something that is more comfortable for you and your lifestyle, but his intentions and goals is something else. And that's where women have to tap into the divine dark feminine, get into those shadows and learn those things, and for those of you who may not have ever heard of the dark feminine, right? The divine dark feminine is a spiritual and psychological concept that speaks to a deep, powerful, and often hidden aspect of the feminine energy. For women who have never heard of it before, it's simply, a simple breakdown would be, at its core, it's about embracing your full power, right? The parts of you that have been shamed, silenced, and suppressed, whether by patriarchy, whether by society, whether by family, whether by sometimes your own mother will be the one who suppressed those things into you. So you have to learn by going into the darkness, by going into the shadow. Join the Shadow Goddess Patreon, right? Join the Goddess Journey Patreon to know and learn how to do this and how this shows up in real life. It's enough to talk about these things and kind of know what they are, but a lot of the time people don't explain what this looks like on a day-to-day basis, what this actually looks like in practice. And so that's what we do here. That's what we do on the the Goddess Journey Patreon. Facing your shadows, right? Those emotions, those things, sometimes good, sometimes bad, even though darkness is almost always associated with something bad, but it's not. Darkness is from where creation come from. Darkness is from your children, right? are formed in your womb are formed in darkness. That's where everything comes from. Right? Light needs darkness in the background in order to be seen, right? So facing those shadows like anger, grief, sensuality, right? That's one of those things that a lot of women have been shunned against, having been raised as a child, very, religious and things like that. Of course, patriarchy and Abrahamic religions go hand in hand because it's a male god. They teach you to repress, right? That women are supposed to be quiet. But this is the thing, right? Do tap into your dark feminine, right? Your dark feminine energy will also get you comfortable with your sensual self, with your sexual self, right? Those things are important. And because that is a very, very extreme weakness for the male, right? For the masculine, the divine masculine, that is a weakness for them. In order to control you, they try to control your sensuality and your sexuality, right? Because it drives them mad, right? So they start to not be able to function, right? They start to only be able to think about those things and will tear anything down and everything down in order to get to that. So you have to understand that so that you understand your power and you can use it as you please and wield it as you please in a healthy and productive way. So facing those things, because the reason why a lot of that has been shunned for women is because the wild woman, the sensual woman, the sex woman, the sexy woman, the woman who is comfortable with her sexuality, right? She's a dangerous woman to the patriarchy because she's 9 times out of 10 free, a free woman, especially when she does it on her own. And that's not the same thing as thotting and bopping, right? But it's being in control of that sort of energy from yourself that has been died down because it's a way to control yourself. You start controlling yourself by shaming yourself, shaming other women, and with the modesty culture and the respectability politics, which has its own separate place and separate conversation. But for the sake of this conversation about the dark feminine, you have to get that in control. Brandy was a good display of that because when she finally decided to cave in and allow him into her body, she knew ahead of time that that was the key that would unlock her Pandora's box, and she explicitly told him that it would not be good for me to be hurt. It was her responsibility as a divine feminine to heal that within herself so that that sexual part of herself, that sensual part of herself does not dictate and control so much of her behavior and ultimately flicks on that light switch of rage. Had she done shadow work, she would be in much more control of those sort of things, right? So facing those emotions and understanding why you have been conditioned to minimize your sexuality and to hyper focus on not being promiscuous and hyper focused on modesty culture and all of those things, right? um Recognizing, facing your shadows with truth telling, understanding the truth about others through understanding the truth about yourself, understanding what unlocks your key, what key unlocks your box, understanding and being responsible and accountable for the way things affect you, like, right? Recognizing that these emotions are sacred, not shameful, right? Reclaiming your wildness, that's intuition, right? Intuition is wild because intuition is the thing that makes people call you crazy, right? It's the knowing, right? The knowing without proof. This is something that the masculine and patriarchy has a very hard time with, and it's very irritating to their spirit, to their lower self when they have bad intentions because they want you to think you're crazy because they don't want you to be able to clock them without evidence. That is a very masculine thing, right? So getting comfortable with your intuition, that inner knowing, the parts of you that don't fit into society's falsified sense of being a good girl, right? We see so many videos and so many, I think of this cute little video I keep seeing that goes viral every so often where this little girl is saying, he's asking, the parents is asking, if somebody come up to you, a stranger, and give you candy, what are you going to do? And in every way, she switched languages and she said, I'm a good girl. I'm going to say yes. This is exactly why we should stop teaching our girls. This is the dark feminine journey, right? Stop teaching your daughters to be good girls, right? To play by the book. Because no matter what you mean by it, sometimes that get interpreted, right? Because children do not have context. Teenagers don't have context. 20 somethings don't have context because your cerebral cortex is not fully developed until you're 25, right? So up until you're 25, you're very vulnerable to your lack of situational awareness, your lack of comprehension, and your lack of understanding because you don't have the full totality understanding of a situation to make a clear cut decision, right? This is why at Brandy's big age, she was still struggling with controlling her emotions, doing the shadow work of the dark feminine journey, right? Tapping into the dark feminine in you in a healthy way will allow you to be emotionally intelligent, right? It will allow you to compartmentalize when need be and to be free flowing when you need to be with your emotions, right? So reclaiming that wildness, that intuition and inner knowing, transformation, using all of these things to transform yourself. Like just like the cycle of death and rebirth, right? You have to shred certain things completely and let them go in order to build anew. Shedding old patterns, letting those things die out that did not serve you so that new growth can happen. The archetype of the dark feminine within Brandy, her motivations, desire, which was her desire for love, for power and control, while dealing with the unhealed heart chakra, right? Those wounds, those insecurities, the betrayal of her first husband, and then of Darnell, right? So had she went on a proper journey of healing and working through those things that left her hurt from her previous relationship, right? Because there's a part when towards the end where she's, kind of getting into Mia and she calls her a nappy head, right? And she says, well, my first husband left me for a white lady. Now, basically, Darnell is leaving me for a nappy head, right? We can go into a whole spiel about the colorism and anti-Blackness in that statement, but long story short, it didn't matter what it looked like, right? She could not just blame her being left alone and isolated and abandoned by these men on the fact that she was Black, right? Because no matter what, they left her for someone else of different races, right? So you can't blame it on that. So what do you blame it on, right? At some point, you have to take that shadow journey to go inward so that you can show up for yourself in a different way, right? So that betrayal that she experienced did not control her in such a massive way. And her desire for love outweighed her ability to see him, even though at the very beginning she knew, right? You are a sum total of the 5 closest people to you, birds of a feather flock together, all of these different sayings to say you are the company that you keep. So her initial meeting Darnell in a very sort of violent, aggressive, catcalling way from his friend that he's literally in business with. So this is somebody that he is very close to, right?
How you doing, baby?
This is your introduction to him, which was already a red flag. If you are dealing with someone and you don't even like the company that they keep that company because they are comfortable within the things that make that company company. Birds of a feather, right? So that was her red flag to see and validate the feelings that she experienced from him. Think of the divine feminine, the dark divine feminine, as this shows up in different ways, right? The fierce protective mother, right? The wise witch or healer, right? The seductress who owns her body, who is not ashamed about her explorations in the boudoir, right? Who is owning everything about her. It's so funny how being, very virginal is so prominent in under a patriarchy, but men are absolutely okay with it when they get to pimp you, right? As long as they can make money off of it, as long as they can control it and control you, they're okay with it. But when you do it, you are a hoe and a thought and a skeezer and all of that, right? You are everything but a child of God. The dark divine feminine, unlike popular belief, is not about being dark in a negative way. It's about going deeper. It's about healing, reclaiming your wholeness, reclaiming those things, a death and rebirth process of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be the feminine, what it means to be divine. And here what it means to be a goddess, right? A divine, dark feminine. Ultimately, the goal is to get to balance, right? But because we're so in balance with the light and fluffy, be good all the time, stuffing all of our true desires down, whether emotionally, sexually, physically, whatever, dive deep. If it doesn't hurt anybody, enjoy it. Let go of the shame that comes with things that patriarchy have conditioned women to be like, right? So it's not about it being negative. It's about finding the strength in places you were taught to hide, right? So this is something that would have done Brandy very well, but she also had this control, changing him, trying to upgrade him. That is something that we must not do as women, because even if a man allows you to do it because it elevates them, that is the reason why they will then leave you for a newer model, or at the very least for someone. Most of the time, actually, not the very least, most of the time they leave you not for someone who is necessarily better than you, but someone who did not see them in that struggle, because they grow resentment from you because of their coding as patriarchal men in this society. They essentially end up resenting you for being better than them and resenting you for having to lean on you and not be able to be a man and do it themselves. So a key moment was him crossing his boundaries in her house. He was getting, trying to get very sexual and touchy-feely during horseback riding, right? They went to the horseback ride and he was like, oh, mind you, let's set the scene. They're in the middle of the woods. They're horseback riding. She doesn't really know him. This is one of a few dates they've been on when she finally gave him a chance, and he pushing up on her right in the middle of the woods because he has a goal, right? He placed a bet on her head. He's trying to win the bet, So he got sexual with her. She got uncomfortable and then ended the date, right? And this sent him into this spiral of a manipulation, right? Now he's trying to be the victim and I'm doing all of these things with you, and yet you're still acting like I'm uncomfortable. Any man who does not respect your boundary to protect yourself do not care about you. Plain and simple. It's not up for negotiation. Some of Brandy darker traits were manipulation, right? We have to, in order to grow, in order to properly take this journey, we have to go into the things that those traits and those things that harm us, right? That we have to fix and heal in order to show up better for ourselves. So some of and we also have to take accountability, right? You cannot just always point the finger at what men are doing to you, because if you are there and if you take his advances, there are a series of choices that you made to end up in a relationship with this man. Take accountability, not to remove it from him, but so that you don't make the same mistake again, in that so you can continue to move throughout the world being an emotionally intelligent, high vibrational being who is in control, who is powerful, and who know how to wield that power. And once you can do that, you can demand retribution from that man, okay? And however you see fit, whatever you're willing to take the consequences for doing, all right? So some of Brandy darker traits that should have been healed was her manipulation, right? She waited and told him about her husband after he was knee deep in her, right? He was eggplant deep in her. And then that's when she, instead of telling him ahead of time, right? Because from what she wants him to believe is she also really loved him. Never mind the fact that she knows that this man is not of her caliber. Never mind the fact that she knows that this man is beneath her station, right? Because she has not healed those things from her previous marriage. She is very much struggling with wanting and desiring love. And that's her whole point, right? So ultimately, she doesn't really care about him either. She cares about what she wants and him fitting into that box, no matter whether it's real or not, because she asked him to tell her that he was in love with her. You know that man don't love you. And he had to break her rules, because if a man that understands that you above his station knows that he has to do a little bit more, you cannot be distracted by him doing a little bit more, right? Because what he did for Brandy would have impressed a lesser woman, a woman that weren't used to finer things, right? A woman that but at the end of the day, it was still beneath her station. She said herself, there is nothing you can buy me that I can't buy myself. So what is it that you want? The one thing he has from you that he can get and that he needs, you know, he's here to collect. So she's saying, what do I need from you? He does not care about what he's providing you. He has a goal to meet because he placed a bet. And ultimately, he want intercourse, right? He want to get into your kitty cat, Miss Mamas. He don't care about what he can offer you. He care about what he came to you for. As a dark feminine, you have to understand. The dark feminine in you will help you understand that it is your responsibility as a woman to be responsible for the things that you know are your standard, and then accepting less. Meaning, this man never had to waltz in her life. The minute she saw him with a friend of such a low caliber, she should have let the train leave the station. But she chose to show up, right? So the dark feminine will guide you to the places that will create so much radical accountability in you that you won't be able to make the same mistakes twice. And if you do, you eat it, you take the L, and you don't point fingers at anyone else, right? So her dark feminine should have let her go, because what she did was end up using that VIP ticket, that VIP pass, even though she said his little club wasn't impressive. And even though she said that she wasn't paying him any mind, right? This is the first time a man was bold and cocky enough to come to a woman of her caliber, right? So she was taking what she could get, ultimately, still moving from a place of desperation, even as a very luxurious, very well-off, self-made Black woman, right? And then enters the, so that manipulation tactic of her waiting until he is inside of her to let him know the hard news, that was given very much manipulation, right? She knew what she was doing. So she set herself on a trajectory to get revenge, right? The dark feminine in you should guide you to foresight, right? To see how something is going to potentially play out. This is where building intuition comes in. This is what men do not want you to be tapped in with, right? Because these are the things that are going to show you what's going to happen without proof. And they don't understand the knowing because they aren't as tapped into source as you are, right? So you have to know what you know, and stand on it regardless of if you're right or wrong, right? Whatever decision you choose to make is yours. Know and understand before you make said decision, no matter what capacity, am I willing to take the consequences for this decision without pointing fingers? Do I kind of know how this is going to play out? And am I accepting of what I know to be true Am I going to be accepting of that truth? And am I going to be able to take accountability and responsibility if I don't listen to my own intuition and my foresight and allow that to be a lesson, right? Sometimes you have to gamble with yourself, right? Test yourself in a healthy way. That does not mean go have a baby, something extreme, right? That means maybe, test yourself. Maybe go out on a date with somebody while strictly remaining safe, not letting them know where you live, driving your own vehicle so you can leave what you want. Let things play out in a safe way. This is how the divine dark feminine will learn to guide you. She will show you things. The more you listen, the more clear the messages will be, right? So you will know when something is a bit more safe to trust and to gamble with. Because she did not tap into her foresight, right? Because she reacted like she knew, but she didn't listen to it. It set her on a trajectory to have to get vengeful, right? The same way she had to do with her last husband who played in her face, right? So it's because she then allowed and made decisions on her own to put herself on a trajectory to get played and then get triggered by a man. She ends up doing what, right? Tapping into her dark feminine, her unhealed dark feminine. This is where she starts to show up unannounced at his apartment, right? Burning bacon, right? Getting violent, showing her power, right? Taking the cake, throwing a knife. How did she know he had resources to find her? Well, she had resources as well. Not only did she know where his mama lived, she knew where Mia lived, right? She clocked his relationship with Mia, even though Mia was at the club with another man. Women know, and you cannot afford to pretend that you don't and then end up in situations where you're out of control and losing yourself and losing control. This is the important part, right? These are the hints and the clues you can use in your own life, which is why I like to use archetypes of people that we all know. And if you haven't seen the movie, watch it. But that seems very interesting because she saw he was with another woman, yet she was still concerned because she was in touch enough to know that it was something going on with him and Mia, even though Mia clearly had her own man. She starts to then try to assert her power. She starts to get even more manipulative with abusing herself, going to the hospital and then pretending that he did it once he got there. She says she was Mia because she knew that he would not have shown up had it been her, right? But how did she know he really liked Mia, right? This is the intuition that women don't listen to and make decisions for, right? The unhealed dark feminine will listen to these things. It'll be conscious, but then you'll fly off the handle instead of just leaving. Or instead, if what he did to you was so egregious that you need to get revenge, get it. But be willing to suffer whatever consequences of the choices that you make, right? Listen to it. That is a good example of women's intuition when they pretend they're victims and don't know, but they really do, because nowhere in there did he tell her at that point that he liked Mia, right? But she knew. And instead of leaving him alone, she dives deeper into that bitterness, into that betrayal, right? And you should not do things like that because that is where the unhealed dark feminine that everyone wants you to understand is what darkness is, but it's not, right? Because what the healed feminine would have done would have been to clock that he liked Mia, remove herself from that situation to avoid the fact that you're capable of offing somebody because she offed her husband, right? That is within you. The point of doing shadow work properly and taking this journey is so that you know what you're capable of. And in long story short, I, and everyone else is capable of anything. Anything that any human does, you're capable of it, right? Now, there are certain parameters of things that have obviously, thank goodness, most of us are coded with certain morality, not violating children or not harming other people. Anytime somebody say they don't like you, physically assaulting someone. The healed dark feminine It's the dark feminine that sees a situation and moves accordingly, right? At that point, she didn't even know him enough to want to get revenge, right? But because she was in her own reality, not really caring what he wanted. Even if you as a woman believe that you wanting a family and children and a man are noble desires, it's not noble to someone who don't want those things. So you trying to force a man to live that kind of lifestyle with you, if that's not what he's here for, is also selfish. It's a less harmful selfish, right? But men know how to respect their boundaries. They know that your reality and their reality is separate and they act accordingly, right? This is how we get into him saying what he needs to say, going against his higher and better self, right? Going against his divine gifts as a divine masculine, knowing, right? The divine masculine in men know that women can be triggered by love, right? That women can be triggered by their emotions. Emotions are a beautiful thing. Emotions can help you manifest, right? That's the good part about it. But emotions not in control can also help you manifest things that you do not want, meaning flying off the handle. Had she been more self-aware and in control of the fact that she's able to enact revenge so effortlessly, she can avoid that in order to continue to be balanced in her life, right? And for her own mental health and for her own mental state, but she did not do that, right? So this also set her on a trajectory of slashing 3 of his tires, a power move, slashing 3 of his tires in front of the police station, right? Tearing his car up, breaking the windshield in front of the police station. Now, this is a tip for Black women, right? As a Black woman, notice what she did in that scene. If you go back and watch that movie, right? She slashed his tires in front of the police station. You have, to some degree, a level of protection from the white man, right? So I'm not saying go slash a man's tires at the police station because you might get arrested. But what I'm saying is a person of her wealth is on a whole different frequency, right? So something she's not even afraid of because she has so much money. And because she's not afraid of it, that frequency of getting caught and all of those things kind of deter her. But that's a whole different conversation for Patreon, okay? Because some people can't handle that. The unhealed darkness in people cannot handle that kind of conversation, right? Because they don't know how to self-govern. The police, white men, are not afraid of you in the way they're afraid of Black men, also because patriarchy, because they don't see you coming as a Black woman either, and they don't respect the power that a woman has, even if they know it's there, right? So she's able to do that, and the police is not going to take her seriously because she's a woman, right? This is where your womanhood as a Black woman will trump your Blackness when it comes to Black men, sometimes even men of color, sometimes even white men, sometimes just depending on who you're dealing with. But for the most part, we're talking about Black men and Black women. So she was able to do that. And he said, I got no love in the police station. They was laughing. They thought it was funny, right? So she was able to assert her power in a very unhealthy, imbalanced way. I said unhealthy and imbalanced. I didn't say right or wrong. Because do what you feel you need to do. Did he deserve it? He shouldn't have played in her face when she asked him not to. I can't tell you what somebody do and don't deserve. That's you. The healed dark feminine can then react appropriately if that's what she wants to do. That starts the, of course, power struggle and everything of her pulling up to his mom's house, of her, being disrespectful, stabbing the cake after he forgot her birthday. Within Darnell, he starts to try to assert his power over her, right? And this is also where the divine masculine has work to do, right? Because there were so many red flags on Brandy's part, where Brandy was highlighting just how off kilter she was and how she was not in a good place, right? Some of the things that divine masculine have to work on, because they have to work on their relationship to the feminine and their disdain and their jealousy and their hatred and animosity and resentment towards the feminine, because these are the things that drive men to try to get so many different women, but it's so meaningless, right? But the one woman that they want, they can't get, right? For in this movie, it was Mia and Mia and Darnell, right? So this is the thing with Mia, and I didn't even think about this, right, when writing notes and stuff about this movie, but Mia was also tapped into her dark feminine, right? And she was actually a version of the heel dark feminine. Now, there are certain things about Mia. We're not going to really get into Mia because it's not about Mia, but I'll say this. A part of Mia that was where her dark divine feminine was guiding her and she listened, right? Was, as I mentioned earlier, when you're able to know how to maneuver life and take chances, right? She knew him, right? There's a level of trust that she has and rapport with Darnell, right? So there's already a layer that is removed because he's not a complete stranger off the street like Darnell is to Brandy, right? So boom, that's already a layer that is good for trying to judge and assess who you can trust, especially when dealing with men, right? Who are looking to use you, right? Because of their relationship, their rapport, them growing up together, right? That there's an element of him loving and caring about her in a deeper way so that she could be a little bit more comfortable giving him a chance, but continuing to date, continue to explore her options, showing that not only can I get another man, I can actually get a man that is better than you, that has come from a good family, that runs a family business, that has money, right? So Mia is still entertaining somebody that she also has feelings for, but in control. Mia is emotionally intelligent, but she did not allow her. She took a chance on somebody that had a better probability of caring about her as a person. Whereas in Brandy took a chance with somebody who was a total stranger who had no pure intentions for her whatsoever, right? So that is a good example of when you may want to give a person a chance while also letting him know that I see you. I know you. I know you a player. So I'm going to go do me. Any decision that I make is going to be the best decision for me, whether that means enlisting back in or not. Know that I'm making the decision that is best for me, right? And she did that so beautifully, right? She navigated that so beautifully, and then the decision on whether to be together, the movie ends where and I'm just making a connection right now, right? The movie ends where essentially it insinuates that he's being faithful. He cuts off, well, they literally show him cut off every person in the movie, but it also insinuates that they kind of stay that way, right? Let's say for the foreseeable few years, and he's not cheating on Mia. She's the only person he's satisfied in that relationship, right? But it's also a good example of how Mia was also being guided and protected in a certain way. You can view it like that as well, because Brandy stepped in with her unhealed divine dark feminine to teach Darnell a lesson. And Darnell was then able to show up differently in the world for Mia, right? A whole new person, because sometimes, most of the time, humans have to go through hard things in order to get a lesson. They can't just tap into source and become able to have foresight and predict. So they have to experience certain things. So the dark feminine works in multiple ways, right? In many ways, in every way. That experience with an unhealed dark feminine made him straighten right on up, right? At the end, he said, somebody better heal that hole in her heart. The only one can do that is her. But somebody better fix that hole in her heart before somebody else get hurt, right? He learned his lesson, but he had to learn it the hard way. And as long as the divine masculine also are so overtaken by their disdain for the feminine, they're going to keep running into these problems. Your dark feminine is not overly emotional, right? She's emotionally intelligent. She knows and will help guide you when this is a time where you need to allow your emotions to flow and fully experience them. And then when to hang it up, always be open to her. Never lean too much towards one side or the other. Remove your emotions from the dark feminine within you will allow you to remove yourself from any situation and observe and in an objective way, right? It will allow you to look at your situation, recollect the facts, and then assess according to what is as if it is not you within it. That is why so many other people outside of you can see things that you can't see, and you can see things in other people's dynamics and situations and relationships that they can't see because they are too engorged in it, and you are on the outside in. Now, that being said, if you're not in it, right, you can't fully grasp the details, especially on an emotional way. But when certain decisions need to be made, that ultimately any decision that puts you in a vulnerable position, you need to be able to make clear cut, objective decisions. And taking the dark feminine journey will allow you to do that in a healthy, productive, savvy, assertive way. All right. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to this video. I'll be dropping another video soon as well, where we dive into another archetype of the dark feminine, the dark mother. We're going to talk about that, which is Georgia from the Netflix show Ginny and Georgia. I love Georgia in that show. There's of course good and bad things. You have to have good and bad things in order to be able to get the totality and get the lessons from it. But highlighting how Georgia, shows up as a mother, how she wheels and dips in and out of dark and light femininity. So I'm so excited about that video coming up pretty soon. I thank you so much for joining and tuning in. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know maybe some things that you picked up out of this movie. Let me know if you were team Brandy or if you were team Darnell. Let me know what you think. Put it in the comment section, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever I drop videos, and join the Goddess Journey Patreon. Links in bio, links is on my channel, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.